Hello, Protestant women of the chapel. I'm taking this opportunity to answer some of the questions that came into Paula and I a few weeks ago, right before the coronavirus closed off our gatherings. And so I thought we would film some questions, trying to do one a day for a week. And I've asked Milo to join us, and he's going to help me as we answer some of your top questions that you submitted.
And these are questions about
Marriage.
So we thought we would do this together. And by we, I mean Bethany thought we should do this together. So here's question. Now, here's the first question we're going to wrestle with. How do you love someone well? So how do you love someone well when you don't know what love looks like?
So we thought we'd begin by giving you an operating definition of what we mean by love. There's lots out there, but I wanted to give us the biblical definition of what love is. So for that, we're going to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends.
And there's a lot there.
Yes.
So I think it's obviously it's one of those that when you press into that definition, you can kind of unpack each of those little love is or love does not things. And I think that's the important thing is culturally, we're given definitions of what love is, whether we like it or not, from romantic comedies or the types of homes we were raised in or the types of relationships maybe we've had in the past or the relationships we've seen in others. And so we cultivate a definition that I think sometimes can be helpful or hurtful. So
it could be unrealistic or one-sided and not really balanced. So this helps us not even know what it is and then what it is not.
All right, so and the second thing that we said, because we looked at this question, sort of discussed it before we got in front of the camera. So the first thing we got to do is we got to define it. Mm-hmm. The second thing we have to do, and you said this, we have to be mindful of it. So it's kind of like if you take this definition and sort of let it wash into your brain and heart, mm-hmm. It gives you something to pray about, gives you something to think about, gives you some bullseyes.
It's something to be proactive about and not reactive. Our whole day, I can live here with my family and just react to what they need, what they say, what they want, and not feel like I'm proactive about my day, what I want to read, how I want to answer, how I want to think about things. But we need to do that. So when you think about loving well, we have it right here on things we can proactively do and demonstrate for our family. So this isn't something we do at 7 o'clock in the morning and then go, oh, that was good, till tomorrow morning. But like, what am I going to do at 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, and 10 o'clock in the morning to go, am I loving the people who mean the most to me well?
Yeah, and evaluating yourself with a definition. Our recommendation is like, this is a really great place to start. Mm-hmm. And kind of evaluating yourself by those things, while at the same time demonstrating a lot of grace to yourself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because I mean we're all figuring out how to do this, and obviously there's ways to do it better and there's ways to do it worse. But I think the importance is to make progress. Mm-hmm. So if you can kind of go like, man, I'm more patient today than I was a month ago because I'm practicing being patient, or my words, I'm choosing kind words when I'm having to discipline the kids or when I'm having to have a hard conversation with my spouse. Because I'm keeping this sort of definition at the forefront of my mind. And as a result, I'm seeing the needle move. It might not be as drastic. And I think that's one of the things I think some people think is if I just do this, I want to see immediate results. And you'll see some results mm-hmm. initially because your spouse will maybe see you acting a bit differently, or seeing you be intentional about things, which is really good. This is going to kill me. So the second thing that we talked about that you could do is you could be mindful of how well you're loving, right? And so we kind of created our thoughts around this before we started shooting on the camera, and you had mentioned that, like actually thinking about having a definition and then thinking about it, praying about it, asking God's wisdom about it throughout the course of the day.
I think if we take this passage to heart every hour of the day, it's one thing to read it at 8 o'clock in the morning and go, okay, what is love? Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy or boast. And the kids aren't in the room with you, maybe the kids aren't up yet. And then by 10 o'clock you think, I don't even know what I did this morning, and you're not thinking about it. I think we can get very reactive to those around us, whether it's our kids, whether it's family back in the States, whether it's a husband here or deployed, and get spun up about stuff we either don't have control of or we're in a reactive mode. But for us to come back within ourselves and come before Jesus and say, Jesus, I need to know how to love well. I need you to be speaking to my conscience all throughout today, pricking me and giving me encouragement, what to say, what words to not say that's not going to help the situation, to love those that you love the most around us.
Great.
So that was my thought on being mindful.
All right, so the third thing that we considered that you could do to love someone well. So the first two are is define love. Like, you need to have an operating definition. The second is be mindful of it. Like, not just have the definition, but be thinking about the definition and evaluating your words and your actions based upon that definition. So be mindful of it. And then the third thing was practice it. Like, put these things into practice. And that kind of bleeds over into what we were talking about with the second thing of being mindful. But like, if I'm supposed to be kind, right? So what are kind words? Like, do I need to kind of think about some of the things I'm saying?
The vocabulary that comes the most natural may not be the ones we need to keep saying. So what are words that will communicate love to your kids at whatever ages they are, and your spouse and your family back at home, that you are being proactive with how you feel, and what God says is how you're supposed to feel, not just saying, well, this is how I feel, I'm going to act on it. That's not biblical. It's not necessarily loving. So this is the definition we're wanting to use. To bear all things and believe all things and hope all things and endure all things. That will change how we talk right there.
Yeah, and I think it's important that, what I love about this definition is it's action oriented. And I know there's some folks that I don't feel like loving. Got it. As an adult, there's lots of things we have to do when we don't feel like it. So it's kind of getting beyond that, maturing beyond that, and going, I'm going to have to just do this. I'm going to have to hope. Because I'm going to choose to hope versus despair. I'm going to have to bear this, even though I don't want to, but this was the obligation. This is the responsibility I took on. This is the commitment I made. So I'm going to bear that responsibility, even though I might be tired and I might be worn out. I'm going to do this. And I think, especially if we operate off the definition the scriptures give us, the Lord promises to give us the strength to execute these things. He promises to give us the discernment to know how to do it in a way that not just benefits our walk with Him, but actually benefits His walk with others that are within our household or even with our spouse. So I think there has to be an intentionality around those things of doing it. Not doing it when you feel good, not doing it when it's convenient. That's, that kind of is easy. But sort of going like, how am I doing when it's not convenient? How am I doing when I don't feel good? And I think there's something sacred that gets introduced from God when that takes place, because you're stepping up and honoring that commitment and that responsibility you made to your spouse. Mm-hmm. Okay, the fourth thing.
Okay.
The fourth thing was you have to see it.
Mm.
What did we mean by that?
Mm.
So the question again is, how do you love well? And so how do you see it? How do you see love? Well,
One of the things we did years ago, and we still enjoy doing it, is that when we saw a couple loving each other well, we made notes and we would talk about it later. Whether it was at lunch, or we'd go on double dates, or we would go to a conference and see a couple, or somebody in our church that was 5, 10, 15 years ahead of us. And we would ask them questions. How do you handle this? What did you do when that happened? And find those mentors in your life that you can be real with and honest with.
And if I can jump into that, and they'll be real and honest with you. So not just finding folks that, you know, they're on a stage and you've kind of got you only get about 45 feet within proximity, but folks that you actually see how they handle conflict. You see how they handle disappointment. You see how they praise one another when people aren't looking. Because I think sometimes, like, there's a lot of really good books out there and some fantastic resources, but it can kind of create a very sterilized set of mentors that don't really kind of get into the granularity of how most of us live our lives. And so, so to Bethany's point, I think there's a part where you not just find the couples that you can go to as a couple, but, you know, there's some people we know that Bethany would peel off and speak with, you know, the ladies specifically, and they had a relationship, and I would spin off and maybe talk with a guy, and we would have a relationship, as well as us having a relationship with a couple. It's can be hard to find. At the same time, you know, we've talked about this. Like, I'm uber confident that this is how God designs his people to be interacting with one another. And so I'm confident that wherever you're at, that God has those people available to you. You just have to look for them. And you have to be praying about it too. Anytime we've gotten into a new situation, be praying about it within a very short period of time. God has already risen up those people. They might not have been the people we would have initially been looking for, but they were the people that we ended up needing in our lives.
And God bringing them to us to go, you're in a new town, in a new situation, and I've just given you neighbors across the street that can speak into you and become friends. Or I've just given you someone on staff with that you really connect with, that you can share your life with and get into the nitty gritty of stuff with.
Or even, like, there was one couple I'm thinking of in North Carolina, Tim and Jan. Like, completely unexpected. I would not have thought we would have connected with them as well as we did. But we ended up in each other's homes and just connected on a variety of things. And they were a massive source of encouragement to us when we were going through a big transition in our lives.
So look for them. And if you don't know them, start praying about God giving you someone, a couple to a couple, or someone back home in a previous church, or someone here in this context that you can reach out to and say, I want to chat with you.
Okay, so we've been covering the question, how do you love well? And obviously this hasn't been exhaustive, but hopefully there's enough here. And I don't think any of this is probably new information. It's probably not, I know it's not rocket science, it's not super complex. It's relatively simple, but simple can be hard because it's really easy to try to find the novelty in other things. And I know right now we're in this quarantine situation, so there's spouses that are obviously separated during this time, and we're praying for you. But there's spouses that are also in closer proximity now than they've been in a really long time. So there's opportunity here to practice this stuff and to make mistakes. And again, always, you know, demonstrate grace to yourself, demonstrate grace to your spouse, while at the same time, you know, continuing to make progress, because, you know, I think our experience has been when we've been diligent with this, we can see progress, you know, year over year over year over year. And so, you know, 21 years now, I think we're in a good place. Okay. Thanks for watching.
See you next time.